Apollo healed plague in Delphi. Coronis entertained her new lover in secret. Only the raven, Apollo's avian spy, saw everything. The bird wrestled with the knowledge. If it spoke, a human would die. If it stayed silent, a god would suffer humiliation. Instinct 1, loyalty to the sun. It flew for 3 days, trailing white feathers through storm clouds, and crashed onto Apollo's lap to report the betrayal. Apollo's rage was surgical. One golden arrow, one heartbeat, Coronis felled. But as her blood soaked the sheets, guilt hit harder than plague, because Coronis carried his unborn son, Asclepius. Apollo yanked the child from the dying womb, gave him to the centaur Chiron, and spun on the trembling raven. You wanted me to see darkness. Now wear it. Flames the color of a lunar eclipse licked across white plumage, charring every feather jet black. The raven screeched, not from pain, but from shame immortalized. From then on, ravens lost the ability to speak in clear words. All that's left is the croak that sounds like a secret you can't quite make out. King Salmoneus looked at Olympus and saw a marketing opportunity. He forged iron wheels that struck bronze streets, sparking hellish fire. He hung bronze kettles along rope bridges, and when his servants tugged the ropes, they roared like thunder across the sky. During festivals, he hurled lit torches from his chariot, shouting, "Tremble, mortals! I am Zeus!" Crowds, half fearful, half entertained, showered him with offerings. Thunder for hire became the hottest ticket north of Delphi, but word climbed the air like smoke, reached the real Zeus, who waited for the perfect dramatic sting. On Salmonia's grandest fate, dark clouds gathered, but the sky remained eerily quiet. Salmoneus rode out, ready to drop his counterfeit thunder. Zeus answered with the genuine article, a single bolt that vaporized the rope bridges, melted the bronze road into a river of screaming metal, and hurled Salmoneus, chariot, horses, ego, into Tartarus. There, chained to a rotating rock, he hears only one sound. Authentic thunder he can never claim. Locals swear the ruins of Salmonia still ring on electric nights. Metallic echoes of Zeus performing an audit on false advertising. Polyphonte, one-time devotee of Artemis, vowed to remain chaste, but Aphrodite, never fond of holdouts, infected her with lust for a passing bear. Yes, a bear. Polyphonte vanished into the woods and returned months later with twin boys, Agrius and Aureus, towering, coarse-haired, with appetites that chilled the blood. They laughed at altars, hunted travelers, and roasted human limbs over campfires. Zeus finally snapped. He ordered Hermes to punish the whole family in whatever way preserves terror for future ages. Hermes, unwilling to butcher newborns, enlisted Ares, who gleefully bound the twins upside down and hacked off hands and feet. But before the blade fell again, the gods changed their minds, opting for metamorphosis over gore. Polyphonte became the Strix, a death omen owl whose shriek freezes armies. Aureus twisted into a towering eagle owl, herald of war. Agrius sank into the body of a vulture, forever gnawing carrion. And the family's hillside cave? Locals swear it still reeks of smoke and sweet meat. Farmers mark its mouth with iron nails. Iron, they say, silences bare-born ghosts. Next time an owl howls before battle, remember Polyphonte's cursed lullaby, a mother's love curdled into dread for every soldier who hears it. Athena once chose an Attic girl named Myrmex as her personal protege. The goddess introduced a dream project, the world's first plow. Myrmex watched, learned, then, intoxicated by the crowd's applause, whispered that she had invented the tool. Athena's gray eyes darkened. Soon after, a jealous wind shoved Myrmex while she harvested wheat. She staggered, dropped an armful of sheaves, and heard laughter, a cruel echo of her own boast. Athena emerged, face sorrowful. "You craved the harvest without the humility." She tapped the girl's forehead. Instantly, Myrmex shrank, limbs splitting, waist pinching. An ant scuttled where a maiden had stood, destined to steal crumbs of grain for eternity, mimicking the theft of Athena's credit. Centuries later, Zeus needed loyal subjects for his son Aeacus in barren Aegina. He saw the ant swarm and, in a grim joke, transformed them into soldiers. The Myrmidons, silent, disciplined, famous under Achilles at Troy. The bravest army in myth owes its origin to a single boastful sentence. Medusa grew up alongside the breathtaking Adonis under the roof of King Cinyras. Where Adonis was radiant, Medusa was steady, god, confidant, brother in all but blood. When a boar gored Adonis in Aphrodite's sacred grove, every flower dimmed, and Medusa felt his chest collapse inward. Days later, they brought Adonis's body home. Medusa strung a rope from a pomegranate tree and hanged himself, grief carving deeper than any tusk. His wife Pelea followed. Aphrodite arrived, drenched in her own tears, too late to save them, but not too late to transform them. Medusa became the apple tree, branches heavy with fruit the color of heart blood. Pelea became the dove, eternal companion to Aphrodite, cooing in the apple's boughs. Their infant son, also named Medusa, was spared and ordered to Delos to teach islanders the craft of shearing sheep. Ever since, Greeks call flocks mela in his honor. Legend says when an apple falls perfectly into a lover's open palm, Medusa is granting a fragment of his devotion, a reminder that love can be both sweet and lethal. Every crunch echoes a heartbreak older than history. Careful who you offer an apple to. Aphrodite might just be listening. Which boundary breaker freaked you out most? Drop your vote below. Smash like if you'll think twice before faking thunder. Subscribe for Forgotten Monsters next week, and ring the bell. Unlike Melinoe, notifications haunt only by day. See you in the echoes. Hor, the thunder god, woke up to find his greatest nightmare had come true. Mjolnir, his mighty hammer that could level mountains and control lightning itself, was gone. Without it, the thunder god was powerless, vulnerable, and mocked. The weapon that defined his very identity as protector of Asgard had vanished without a trace. But what happened next would humiliate him more than any defeat in battle. To get his hammer back, Thor would have to do something that went against every fiber of his warrior identity. You won't believe the disguise he ends up in. It all began on what should have been an ordinary morning in Asgard. Picture Thor reaching for the leather grip that had been at his side for countless centuries, his fingers closing around nothing but empty air. The spot where Mjolnir should rest felt cold and wrong, like a missing tooth that your tongue keeps finding. Thor's morning routine, as predictable as sunrise over Asgard's golden halls, shattered in that single moment of realization. The hammer forged by dwarven masters, the weapon that could summon lightning and level mountains, had vanished without so much as a whisper of sound. The initial shock hit Thor like a physical blow. His hand remained suspended in space, still reaching for what wasn't there. Then panic crept in, cold and relentless. He let out a blood-curdling roar of sheer rage, the whole palace trembling. Without Mjolnir, he was powerless, vulnerable, and mocked, stripped of the weapon that made him Asgard's primary defender. The enemies that prowled the borders of the Nine Realms knew about his mighty hammer. They counted on Thor's strength to keep them at bay. Now that strength was gone. Word spread through Asgard's halls faster than wildfire. The other gods gathered in emergency council, their faces grave as they grasped the full scope of the crisis. Odin's ravens had brought no news. The watchmen at the gates had seen nothing. Mjolnir had simply disappeared, as if it had never existed at all. The assembled gods understood what Thor's loss meant for their realm. Asgard stood vulnerable, its greatest protector reduced to a shadow of his former self. Loki stepped forward through the crowd of worried gods, his familiar, cunning smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He offered to investigate the theft using his shape-shifting abilities, volunteering to venture where other gods could not go undetected. The council accepted his proposal immediately, desperate for any lead in their search. Thor watched his brother prepare for the mission, knowing that Loki's success or failure would determine his own fate. Loki first borrowed Freya's magic feathered coat, allowing him to fly in falcon form to Jotunheim without raising alarms. Each dead end pushed Thor deeper into desperation. He imagined facing his enemies defenseless, their laughter echoing as they realized the thunder god carried no thunder. The trail finally led to the most dangerous territory of all, Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. Loki strode into the council chamber with the confident gait of someone who had solved a mystery, but his expression carried an ominous weight. The giant Thrym, lord of the frost giants, had openly boasted about his theft from his massive throne of ice and stone. He had buried Mjolnir 8 leagues beneath the frozen earth of his realm, thrice deeper than any giant's hall, he claimed, placing it where even Thor's strength would be useless. Thrym had what he thought was a simple demand for the Norse gods. He wanted the beautiful goddess Freya as his bride in exchange for the hammer's return. The giant had fixated on her legendary beauty and grace, convinced that possessing both Mjolnir and the goddess of love would make him the most powerful being in all the 9 realms. His arrogance knew no bounds as he described his elaborate wedding plans to Loki, speaking of golden halls and feasts that would last for weeks. Thrym believed the gods had no choice but to accept his terms. When Loki spoke to the council about Thrym's demand, the council fell silent. Freya's reaction shattered the tense quiet that followed Loki's report, causing her rage to break the Brysinger necklace, its gems scattering across the floor in glittering fragments. She declared she would rather throw herself into the deepest ocean than marry the frost giant who dared make such a demand. The gods found themselves trapped in an impossible situation. They could sacrifice one of their most beloved goddesses to a giant's lust, or they could leave Thor permanently weakened and Asgard vulnerable to every enemy that prowled the borders. The council erupted in frantic debate. Some suggested launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. Others proposed trickery or negotiation, but every path led to either devastating war or humiliating surrender. Heimdall, the far-seeing guardian who watched over the Rainbow Bridge, had remained silent throughout the heated discussions. When he finally spoke, his words stopped every conversation in the hall. His suggestion was so outrageous, so completely unthinkable, that even Loki's jaw dropped open in shock. The gods stared at Heimdall as if he had lost his mind, but they were out of other options. What he proposed, however, would challenge everything Thor stood for as a warrior. Heimdall's words hung in the air like a challenge to the very foundations of Norse honor. The far-seeing god had suggested that Thor disguise himself as a bride and infiltrate Thrym's wedding feast to recover Mjolnir. He spoke with calm authority, tie housewife's keys about his waist, and pin bridal jewels upon his breast. The idea was so fundamentally opposed to Norse concepts of masculine honor that Thor's initial response shook the very walls of Asgard. He declared the plan preposterous and swore he would never hear the end of it if word spread that the Thunder God had dressed as a woman. The assembled gods watched in tense silence as their mightiest protector wrestled with a challenge that could not be solved through brute force or lightning strikes. They had already considered launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. No other choice remained. Thor paced the hall like a caged wolf, his massive fists clenched as he grappled with the impossible choice between his warrior's pride and his duty to protect Asgard. Every instinct in his body rebelled against the idea of abandoning his identity as a fearsome warrior to play the role of a delicate bride. Loki stepped forward with barely contained excitement, volunteering to accompany Thor as his maidservant. The trickster god's eagerness to participate in this elaborate deception revealed his true nature. While Thor struggled with the concept, Loki was already plotting the specifics of costumes, mannerisms, and the lies they would need to maintain throughout their dangerous mission. The transformation began with layers of bridal linen draped over Thor's massive frame. Servants brought forth delicate jewelry, housewife's keys that symbolized domestic authority, and a dainty hood for his head. Finally came the precious necklace of Briesinger. Each item added to the disguise felt like another blow to Thor's warrior identity. When he finally looked at his reflection, the god of thunder saw an unconvincing bride staring back at him. Thor finally accepted the plan because no alternative existed. The unlikely pair prepared to set off for enemy territory, where their deception would face its ultimate test among giants, eager to celebrate their lord's triumph. The great hall of Thrym's fortress buzzed with excitement as giants gathered to witness their lord's marriage to the most beautiful goddess in all the 9 realms. Thor sat at the high table in his bridal disguise, surrounded by massive frost giants who raised their drinking horns in celebration. The feast spread before them displayed the giants' wealth and power. Roasted oxen filled enormous platters, fresh salmon gleamed on silver dishes, and barrels of mead stood ready to fuel the night's festivities. Thor's legendary appetite struck like a thunderbolt. He polished off an ox and ate whole salmon in moments, tearing through the meat as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. 3 measures of mead vanished as quickly as if someone had poured them into a bottomless pit. The assembled giants watched in stunned silence as the delicate bride consumed more food than most warriors could handle. Thrym's eyes narrowed with growing suspicion. This goddess ate like a battle-hardened warrior, returning from a long campaign, not like the refined Freya he expected to marry. Loki stepped forward with the smooth confidence of a master storyteller. He spun a tale about Freya's 8-day fast in eager anticipation of reaching Jotunheim and marrying the mighty Thrym. The explanation painted a picture of a lovesick goddess, so excited about her wedding that she had refused all food during her journey. The giants nodded in understanding, their suspicions melting away as they accepted this romantic explanation. Thrym felt honored by such devotion and relaxed completely, his doubts vanishing. Beneath his bridal veil, Thor's rage simmered like molten metal ready to explode. Every moment at the feast brought new challenges as he struggled to maintain feminine mannerisms while surrounded by his enemies. His massive hands shook with barely controlled fury as he watched the giants celebrate what they believed was their victory over Asgard. The critical moment finally arrived. Thrym commanded his servants to bring Mjolnir forth, the very moment Thor had trained his eyes on since dawn. The servants placed the legendary weapon before the disguised bride as part of the traditional ceremony. Thor's fingers closed around Mjolnir's familiar handle, and lightning immediately crackled through the hall. He ripped away his bridal veil and roared his true identity to the shocked giants. Thrym's eyes widened in terror as he realized the bride he had been celebrating was actually the god of thunder himself. Thor swung Mjolnir, killing Thrym instantly after crushing his skull with Mjolnir, then turned on the assembled giants, and even the pleading giantess met Mjolnir's crack before the hall fell silent. The theft that had begun with arrogance ended in complete destruction. This tale reveals how even the mightiest heroes must sometimes sacrifice their pride to protect what matters most. Back in Asgard, the Aesir never spoke of the bearded bride again, though a few still hide a smirk when Thor raises Mjolnir. And we end this story with a very valuable lesson. Never steal Thor's hammer. And if you're going to, don't make him dress like a woman. Imagine a woman so terrifying that a single glance from her could turn anyone into stone. Medusa, a name that echoes through history as a monster, a villain, and a symbol of pure horror. But what if everything you thought you knew about her was wrong? Medusa wasn't always a monster. Her story is one of betrayal, injustice, and a curse she never deserved. She wasn't born a villain. She was made into one by the gods themselves. But even as a victim, she found a way to turn her tragedy into power. Today, we'll unravel the myth of Medusa and discover the deeper truth behind her story. From her tragic origins to her transformation into a feared Gorgon, to her epic confrontation with Perseus. This is the tale of Medusa like you've never heard it before. Long before the snakes, before the curse, Medusa was a mortal woman of extraordinary beauty. She wasn't born a monster. She was born human, the daughter of the sea gods, Phorcys and Ceto, while her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were immortal Gorgons. Medusa stood apart as the only mortal among them. But it wasn't her mortality that set her apart. It was her beauty. Medusa's golden hair, radiant complexion, and striking eyes captured the attention of everyone, even the gods. She served as a priestess in the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, vowing to remain pure and devoted to the goddess. This is where her life took a tragic turn. According to the myth, Poseidon, the god of the sea, became infatuated with Medusa. Overcome by desire, he pursued her relentlessly, and one fateful day he cornered her in Athena's temple. Medusa, defenseless, could not escape his wrath. But instead of protecting her, Athena turned her fury against Medusa. The goddess, enraged by the desecration of her temple, cursed Medusa for what had happened, punishing the victim instead of the perpetrator. Athena's curse transformed Medusa into a Gorgon, a being so hideous that no one could bear to look at her. Her golden hair turned into a nest of venomous snakes, and her eyes became so powerful that a single glance could turn living creatures to stone. This moment defined Medusa's new existence. Once revered for her beauty, she was now feared and hunted as a monster. But beneath the horror of her transformation lay a deeper question. Was Medusa truly cursed, or had she been given a weapon to defend herself in a world that had betrayed her? Medusa fled from civilization, retreating to a remote island where she lived in solitude. Here she came to terms with her new form and the terror it inspired. The snakes in her hair hissed constantly, and her reflection, once a source of pride, was now a weapon she couldn't dare to look at. But the world wouldn't let her rest. Tales of the monster of the island spread across Greece, and soon warriors came seeking glory by trying to slay her. None succeeded. Each challenger who entered her domain fell victim to her petrifying gaze, their bodies forever frozen in stone. Medusa's life became one of survival, fending off those who sought to destroy her while grappling with the isolation of her curse. She was trapped in a cycle of violence she didn't choose, but couldn't escape. As the years passed, Medusa's story became twisted. In the eyes of mortals, she was no longer the victim of a cruel curse, but a monster to be feared. The tragic young woman was lost to legend, replaced by the image of a terrifying villain. Enter Perseus, a young demigod with a destiny to fulfill. Tasked with bringing back Medusa's head as proof of his strength, Perseus embarked on a perilous journey to find her. But unlike the warriors before him, Perseus wasn't relying solely on his skill. He had the favor of the gods. Athena and Hermes provided Perseus with gifts to help him on his quest. Winged sandals to fly, a reflective shield to avoid Medusa's gaze, and a sword sharp enough to cut through anything. Most importantly, he was given a magical bag to safely carry her severed head. Perseus's journey to Medusa's lair was filled with danger, but none compared to the final challenge, facing the Gorgon herself. When Perseus arrived, Medusa was sleeping. For the first time in years, she looked peaceful, an almost human reminder of who she once was. But Perseus couldn't afford to hesitate. Using the reflective shield as a mirror, he avoided her petrifying gaze and struck with precision, severing her head in one swift motion. The blood that spilled from Medusa's neck gave birth to two incredible beings, Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chryser, a golden giant. Even in death, Medusa's body produced miracles, a testament to the power she had carried within her. Perseus carried Medusa's severed head back to Greece, where it became both a trophy and a weapon. Her gaze retained its power, turning enemies into stone, and Perseus used it to defeat his foes and protect his people. But Medusa's story didn't end with her death. Over time, her image transformed from that of a monster to a symbol of strength and defiance. Women, especially, began to reclaim her story, seeing her as a figure who resisted the gods and survived unimaginable betrayal. Today, Medusa is more than a mythological figure. She's an icon. Her face appears in art, literature, and even modern movements that challenge systems of power and oppression. But the question remains, was Medusa truly a monster, or was she a victim of a world that feared her power? Medusa's story is a reminder that myths are more than just tales of gods and heroes. They're reflections of human nature, of the injustices and triumphs we still see today. So, what do you think? Was Medusa a villain, or was she a misunderstood symbol of resilience? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a like if you found her story as fascinating as we did. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the myths and legends that continue to shape our world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep looking beyond the surface. Loki's punishment was brutal. Bound deep within a cavern, his body lashed to 3 jagged rocks with the entrails of his own son. Above him, a serpent hung poised, venom dripping relentlessly onto his exposed skin. This scene, drawn from the poetic Edda and the prose Edda, became a symbol of both divine vengeance and suffering that echoed through Norse legend. But the gods never counted on one presence: Sigyn, Loki's faithful wife. Her hands trembled as she knelt beside him, catching each drop of poison before it could sear his flesh. Her quiet devotion became a fragile shield against the god's wrath. Why did she choose loyalty over escape? The answer reveals a truth about love that endures even when the world itself seems lost to darkness. Yet before the cavern, before the venom and the silence, there was a betrayal that shook the heart of Asgard. Baldur was the light of Asgard, cherished by gods and mortals alike. His laughter filled the halls, a warmth that even the golden apples of Idun could not rival. When ominous dreams began to trouble him, his mother Frigg, desperate to protect her son, secured oaths from every creature and object in existence never to harm him. All, that is, except the mistletoe, too slight, too innocent to warrant suspicion. Loki saw opportunity in what others dismissed. He fashioned a dart from that fragile branch and sought out Hoder, Baldur's blind brother. "Here," Loki murmured, placing the weapon in Hoder's uncertain grasp, "let me guide your hand." The dart struck its mark. In an instant, Baldur's light was snuffed out, his presence gone from the world. The gods stood in stunned silence, their joy shattered. Loki lingered in the shadows, the faintest smile on his lips, before slipping away unseen. The prose Edda tells us the pyre burned for 9 nights. Baldur's wife, Nanna, overcome with grief, cast herself onto the flames, her spirit entwined with his. The gods heaped treasures upon the funeral bier, Odin's ring Draupnir, Baldur's own ship Hringhorni, to honor him, but no offering could fill the void left behind. The air grew heavy with suspicion. As the smoke twisted skyward, word spread of an old woman whispering to Hoder in the moments before the fatal blow. When Thor forced the truth from a trembling servant, silence fell like a shroud. Loki's name was not spoken, but its weight pressed upon every heart. The gods had tolerated his mischief, his clever lies, even the theft of Sif's hair. But this was different. The poetic Edda names him plainly: Loki, the guileful who brought it about, from which all misfortune came. Odin convened the gods to pass judgment. No mead flowed, no boasts rang out. The All-Father's single eye burned cold as he named Loki Oathbreaker and Kinslayer. Weapons gleamed in restless hands. Even gentle Friar's fingers tightened around his sword. Loki understood the god's fury. He fled Asgard, his mind racing with schemes. As told in the prose Edda, he built a lodge in the mountains, doors on every side, always watching for his pursuers. Still, he could not outrun their vengeance. Odin's gaze found him, even in hiding. When the gods arrived, Loki tried to slip away, transforming into a salmon to evade capture in the river's swift current. But Thor's grip proved stronger than fate. Dragged back through the gates he once helped raise, Loki passed faces twisted with anger and betrayal. The gods' judgment was swift. The path ahead led not to mercy, but to a place where pain and silence waited in the damp and the dark. They forced Loki into the heart of the earth, a cavern where the air pressed cold and heavy, and every sound echoed off stone walls, slick with damp. Water dripped steadily from above, each drop magnifying the hush that settled over the gods as they set to their grim task. The stench of venom lingered, sharp and persistent, mingling with the iron tang of old blood. Odin's single eye caught the flicker of Skadi's movement. A silent nod passed between them, sealing what would come next. 3 massive boulders, freshly gouged with holes, stood ready. The gods had not brought chains or rope. Instead, they made Loki's punishment a reflection of his own chaos. The prose. Edda tells us they transformed one son, Vali, into a wolf who slew his brother, Nari. With the entrails of Nari turned to iron by the gods' will, they bound Loki fast, wrists, neck, thighs, and ankles locked tight against the unyielding stone. As the Völuspá declares, with the guts of his ice-cold son, the killer is bound. Each knot and twist was deliberate, a reminder that his own blood now held him captive. The weight of the rocks pressed into his flesh, a constant ache that would never fade. Skadi stepped forward, her presence sharp as frost. In her hands a serpent writhed, its fangs gleaming. She fixed the creature to a stalactite directly above Loki's face. "For Balder," she said, her voice steady and cold. The serpent's jaws parted, and a bead of venom gathered at its tip. It hung for a moment, then fell. Loki's scream reverberated through the cavern, his body arching in agony as the venom burned into his skin. The pain was relentless, searing into bone, and the world above felt its echoes, earthquakes shaking Midgard, rivers shifting, the roots of Yggdrasil quivering. The gods watched in silence, their faces unreadable. Justice, they believed, had been served. As the serpent's venom continued its slow assault, the rhythm of torment became all-consuming. The next drop formed, poised to fall. Then a figure emerged at the edge of the chamber, a woman, silent, a wooden bowl cradled in her hands. Sigin's arms were blistered, her sleeves stained, but her grip was unwavering as she stepped into the circle of pain. The cavern held its breath. Sigyn knelt, her presence a quiet defiance. The venom hissed into the bowl, wood darkening with each drop. The gods turned away, their judgment complete, but the story within the cavern was only beginning. The bowl rested in Sigyn's hands, its wooden sides polished by hours of silent endurance. She knelt on the cold stone, skirts bunched beneath her, and waited for the serpent's venom to fall. The first drop struck with a hiss, a thin wisp of smoke curling up as Loki's breath caught in his throat. She kept her gaze fixed on the bowl, her resolve anchored by the rhythm of her task. Time unraveled in the cavern, marked only by the relentless cadence of the venom. Drip, catch. The liquid sizzled as it struck the wood, the heat seeping through Sigyn's calloused palms. Each shift of her grip was subtle, a quiet adjustment to keep the bowl steady as her arms ached. Above, the serpent's shadow twisted over the stone, its coils unmoving, its venom gathering in slow, deliberate drops. Loki whimpered, bracing for pain that had become his constant companion. The sound of his dread was sharper than his cries. The air hung heavy with the stench of scorched flesh and the metallic sting of poison. The darkness pressed in, broken only by the faint glimmer of Sigyn's tears as they mixed with venom in the bowl. each drop a testament to her resolve. The silence between drops was punctuated by Loki's ragged breaths and the distant echo of water dripping from the cavern walls. Sigin's world narrowed to the weight in her arms and the threat above. The bowl filled, the venom rising perilously close to the rim. Sigin's muscles trembled, but she did not let her grip falter. When at last the bowl brimmed, she had no choice but to turn away. In that brief moment, as she emptied the venom onto the rocks, Loki's body convulsed, his scream raw and unrestrained. The poison ate into the stone, leaving blackened scars as Sigyn hurried to wipe the bowl clean and return to her vigil. For time beyond reckoning, Sigyn remained. The myth offers no window into her thoughts, only the image of her kneeling, unwavering as Loki's mind splintered under the weight of his agony. Was she remembering laughter in sunlit halls, or simply unable to imagine leaving him alone in the dark? The venom's rhythm never changed. The bowl would fill. Loki would suffer. Sigyn would endure. In the hush that followed each scream, a question lingered, one that neither gods nor mortals could answer. Love in the dark was never simple. While the gods turned away, Sigyn remained, her presence reshaping the meaning of Loki's punishment. His betrayals had echoed through Asgard, yet her loyalty was a force the gods never expected. The Eddas offer no window into Sigyn's thoughts, recording only her actions. Blistered hands, a steady bowl, venom caught before it could sear flesh. This silence leaves space for us to wonder. Was it love that held her there, or a deeper sense of duty, something older and more enduring than the gods' own laws? Loki, once the master of deception, now depended on the mercy of the one he had so often left in the shadows. When the bowl overflowed and Sigyn turned away, each drip crept like fire through him, twisting his features in agony. His eyes, when they met hers, flickered with both gratitude and resentment. He needed her, but the venom's torment mingled need with bitterness. Still, Sigyn returned every time, catching the next drop before it could fall. The myths do not say what passed between them in those moments, only that she stayed, her resolve unbroken. Scholars often call Sigyn the embodiment of loyalty, the ultimate symbol of spousal devotion. Yet, her sacrifice was more than an act of love. It was a quiet rebellion. By kneeling in the cavern, she defied the gods' vision of justice. Odin had crafted Loki's punishment to be absolute, to break him alone in the dark. Sigyn's refusal to abandon her husband became a shield, her presence a silent protest that denied the gods complete victory. The Eddas never assign her a motive, leaving modern readers to fill the silence with their own questions and interpretations. Was her endurance an act of compassion, or a challenge to the order imposed by the gods? Each drip marked the passage of time, each bowlful a measure of suffering and steadfastness. Loki's laughter, once quick and sharp, faded into broken gasps. His words, sometimes curses, sometimes pleas, found no purchase. Sigyn's hands grew raw and ruined, but she did not falter. The cycle of pain and mercy continued, unbroken. In the end, it was not just Loki who endured the gods' punishment. Sigyn's vigil transformed it, turning isolation into a shared ordeal. In the darkness, her silent defiance and unwavering love became part of the myth, a testament to the power of presence, even when the world has turned away. Sigyn's vigil stands as one of Norse myth's quiet marvels, a steady presence in the shadows, her strength measured not in battle, but in endurance beside the one the gods condemned. As Loki writhed beneath the venom's relentless burn, Sigyn's hands never wavered. The Eddas remember her not for words or deeds of glory, but for the silent rhythm of her care. Her story reminds us that sometimes love endures in darkness. Sigyn's vigil continues until the twilight of the gods, Ragnarok, whenever that may come. Would you have stayed? If Sigyn's silent strength moved you, let us know in the comments or share your favorite Norse hero below. Heroes, monsters, tragedies, you know the drill. Tonight we flip the script. Some little-known tales where wit, nerve, or kindness earn outright miracles. Glass number 1 holds a bronze serpent coiled around a sprig of green, and a boy who literally came back sweeter than honey. Knossos in Midsummer smells of rosemary, sea salt, and beeswax. While the court argued harvest taxes, young Glaucus chased a bright blue lizard past the kitchens through a corridor stacked with amphorae of fermenting honey, and, because small boys fit where gods do not, straight down a ladder into the palace cellars. Down there, the air was syrup thick. Glaucus peered into a half-open jar, hoping to see the lizard's tail. One wobble, a slip, a splash. The honey swallowed his cry, sealed itself like amber, and the cellar went still except for the slow fizz of wild yeast. When the nurse discovered an empty playroom, Minos promised royal exiles, or worse, to anyone who failed to find his heir. Search parties raked the island. An oracle finally muttered, "He is where sweetness turns to gold, and the color-changing calf is the compass." Everyone stared blankly, except one messenger who remembered a traveling seer rumored to solve riddles the way bards solve rhyme schemes. Polyidus arrived soaked in salt spray and sarcasm. Minos thrust him in front of the palace's miracle calf, white at dawn, tawny by noon, black at dusk. The king demanded an explanation, and his son before sundown. The seer stroked his beard, watched the calf cycle its living palette, and smiled. "The answer is not the hide, but the eyes," he mused. At dawn, the calf watched the white sun. At noon, bronze. At dusk, onyx night. It mirrored what it beheld. So must the prince. "He is hidden where color vanishes," Polyidus concluded, and descended alone into the wine-dark storerooms. Lantern raised, he located the honey amphora, whose surface held no reflections, only silence. He cracked the seal, found Glaucus suspended in golden stillness, lips blue, limbs floating like reeds in amber. When guards hauled boy and jar to the throne room, Minos' relief curdled into fury. "Resurrect him," he ordered, "or you will keep him company." The seer and the honey coffin were locked inside a stone vault. The bar grinded shut. Torches flickered out. The only light came from honey's inner glow. Polyidus knelt, mind racing through every charm he knew. None could reverse 2 hours without breath. A soft hiss cut the darkness. A serpent, scales gold as harvest wheat, slipped under the door. Polyidus, fearing venom, crushed it with a wine jug. Silence returned, briefly. A second serpent slid beside its fallen mate, circled the bottom, vanished into a crack, and re-emerged, clutching a sprig of leaves that glimmered in emerald fire. Pressed the herb to the dead serpent's mouth. In a shiver of cinder, the creature revived. The pair slithered away, leaving the leaf behind like a lesson. Polyidus' pulse hammered. He ground the glowing plant between stone shards, smeared the paste across Glaucus' cold lips, and half praying to gods who seldom pick up, waited. A heartbeat. 2. Then the boy coughed, honey and air and the shriek of returning life. He sat up wide-eyed, asking if lunch was ready. The vault erupted in shouts. Guards dragged them to Minos, whose relief eclipsed his threats. "Teach the child your art," the king commanded, "and you may leave Crete with both eyes intact." For 30 days, Polyidus tutored Glaucus, reading omens in bird flight, divining storms by the smell of stone, decoding dreams as if they were parchment. Each lesson the seer delivered with growing dread. Minos could weaponize prophecy. On the final morning, he presented Glaucus with a cup of wine to seal memory. The boy drank. Polyidus leaned close, whispered a single word and the wine turned bitter. Glaucus spat it back onto Polyidus's lips. That was the spell. Every technique, every cosmic shortcut drained from the boy's mind like sand through a broken hourglass. He would live healthy, happy, but ordinary. The gift stayed locked in Polyidus's own skull. The seer departed at sunset, pockets empty except for a few stray violet leaves, the serpent herb. Some say he planted them across the Aegean. Others insist he fed them to bees, breeding honey that glows faintly green when moonlight is thin. In mountain apiaries of rural Greece, beekeepers still search for Glaucus honey, said to cure a stopped heart if administered within 3 breaths. And every cellar apprentice learns, keep lids tight, keep ladders chained, and keep an eye out for serpents. Sometimes they carry medicines gods never meant us to find. Nymph Princess Cyrene tackles a lion preying on her father's cattle. Apollo, stalking inspiration, watches her wrestling the beast bare-handed and thinks, forget liars, that's poetry. He swoops not with roses but a gold chariot pulled by griffins. Rule a land of your own, he says, pointing across the Mediterranean. Cyrene's answer, give me a bowstring and some good soil. She rides shotgun all the way to Libya. On sun-drenched highlands, she spears the ground. Fresh springs burst. The place becomes Cyrene, namesake queen founder. Apollo immortalizes her as a long-lived nymph. Their sons include Aristaeus, future bee guru, and Eadmon, Argonaut prophet. Centuries later, Cyrenean olive oil sells for triple price in Athens. Bottles carry a tiny embossed lion, reminder that one headlock can echo into a civilization. Morning of his birth, infant Hermes crawls out of cradle, spies a tortoise, hollows the shell, strings cow gut. Voila, the first lyre. Same afternoon, he rustles 50 of Apollo's divine cattle, walking them backward to confuse hoof prints. Apollo tracks the tune of an unfamiliar instrument to a cave and catches, not a rustler, a giggling baby. Hermes begins to play. The melody melts Apollo's fury like wax. The sun god trades the entire herd plus the golden staff of herdsmen for the lyre. Contract signed before Hermes can crawl again. Apollo becomes patron of music. Hermes gains official portfolio of travelers, traders, and, ironically, thieves. Every time a guitarist hands a riff to a bandmate for mutual gain, they reenact that cave-side barter. Enslaved courtesan Rhodopis toils in a Nile Delta villa. Her only treasure, a rose-hued slipper dating to her free childhood. She washes linens in the river, humming Ionian lullabies. While drying on the bank, one slipper is whisked by a sacred falcon, messenger of Horus, who drops it into Pharaoh Psamatechus's lap during court. Kings love omens. He declares he will marry the owner. Decree echoes across gnomes. Every woman must try the slipper. Noble women sulk. The shoe fits none until desert winds guide inspectors to Rhodopis scrubbing floors. The leather hugs her heel like destiny. Pharaoh weds the astonished Greek. At festivals, Rhodopis releases doves in thanks, tying our dove myth into hers, while storytellers across the Mediterranean seed the earliest Cinderella variant. Tyrrhenian pirates spy a pretty youth on an island. Clueless, it's Dionysus in vacation mode. They abduct him, plotting ransom. Helmsman Acoetes senses trouble but is overruled. Ropes fall off as ivy coils up masts. Sweet wine floods planks. Panthers materialize, purring menace. Pirates jump ship in panic. Instead of vengeance, Dionysus transforms them into dolphins so they can atone by guiding sailors. Acoetes receives priesthood and a lifetime ticket to every Bacchic festival. Mediterranean fishermen still toss libations overboard for the merry sailors, believing every dolphin escort is a pirate making cosmic amends. On a Boeotian hillside, twin princes Amphion and Zethus debate destiny. Zethus flexes farm boy muscle, shouting, "Stone walls rise by calloused hands." Amphion replies by tuning a 7-string lyre, a gift Apollo slipped into his cradle. They inherit a dream, rebuild ruined Thebes. Zethus drives oxen and hefts limestone, but progress is glacial. At sundown, Amphion plucks a chord so pure nightingales freeze mid-song. Blocks quiver, lift and float into place. Each note a crane, each chord a pulley. Workers drop their levers and just watch. The wall grows faster than dawn's shadow. Jealous masons challenge him to raise the Cyclopean gate alone. Amphion smiles, strums a rugged minor scale. Boulders lumber across the valley like obedient elephants. Zethus, not to be outdone, times hammer blows to his brother's rhythm. For one glorious hour, hard labor becomes rock ballet. When the ramparts close, citizens cheer both sinew and song. Legends claim every stronghold thereafter leaves a lyre motif somewhere in its masonry, a secret tip of the hat to the prince who taught stones to dance. Modern acoustic engineers still reference the Amphion effect when vibration solves heavy lift problems. Princess Evadne hides an affair with Apollo. During labor, a blaze of violet light floods the barn. Baby Emus arrives enveloped in wild violets. Fearful, she places him on the riverbank, trusting fate. Weeks later, shepherds follow a bizarre sight. Honeybees moving in arrow formation. They find the infant alive, fed by nectar dripping from the flowers around him. The shepherd who lifts the child hears a voice inside his skull. "Raise me, I'll repay you in answers." At adolescence, Apollo calls Iamus to Olympia's sacred grove. The god lays out 2 golden bowls, memory and forgetting, telling him to sip both. First bowl grants recall of every secret root in earth. Second erases the fear of sharing that knowledge. Iamus founds a bloodline of oracles, famed for perfect attendance records at Delphi and Olympia. Even today, locals say a self-sown violet patch near the Alpheus River blooms out of season before big sporting events, Apollo's subtle wink that a prophecy ticket is about to drop. Young healer Melampus saves 2 baby snakes from a plow blade. Nights later, they slither onto his pillow and lick his ears with herbal-coated tongues. He bolts upright to a cacophony that suddenly makes sense. Sparrows gossip, ants debate tunnel routes, sheep rehearse lullabies. King Proteus's daughters are struck with goat hallucinations, stampeding through Argos. Melampus eavesdrops on an oak tree, chuckling with a raven. A draught of hellebore in river foam will still their frenzy. He brews it. 1 sip and royal sanity snaps back. Kingdom cheers. Fee time. Melampus wants 1/3 of the realm. Proetus balks until the cattle low in perfect Greek. He's worth it. Impossible to refuse a bovine referendum. Territory ceded. For generations, Argive herders prop a wooden ear in new barns, a reminder that real leadership might start with understanding what even a beetle has to say. Priest King Aeneas hosts Dionysus and Apollo at a midsummer feast. In gratitude, the gods bless his 3 daughters, Oeno, Spermo, Elais, with hand gestures that turn objects into wine, grain, and oil. Years later, the Achaean armada, en route to Troy anchors at Delos, supplies dangerously low. Aeneas offers help. The daughters flick wrists, and the beach is suddenly a farmer's market. Agamemnon plots to kidnap the miracle caterers for a 10-year war buffet. Dionysus intervenes. With a grape leaf touch, he turns the sisters into doves. Free to fly anywhere, grain, oil, and wine are prayers waiting to be answered. Delian festivals still release 3 white doves at dawn over picnic blankets. Fishermen swear the birds guide them to shoals fat with fish. Proof generosity multiplies even after airborne retirement. If you felt the buzz of bees and the rattle in the dark, hit like, subscribe for more long-form myth dives, and ring the bell so the next chapter arrives before the honey seals shut. Centaurs. Half man, half horse. Heroes or savages? Think you know the full story? Wait until you uncover the darker side of these iconic creatures. Watch till the end to discover what ancient myths don't tell you about the Centaurs. In Greek mythology, Centaurs were seen as both wild and noble beings. They were often depicted as powerful warriors, famous for their strength and skill in battle. But what if the truth behind them was far more sinister than anyone imagined? While some centaurs, like Chiron, were revered for their wisdom and kindness, many others were violent, uncontrollable creatures. These savage centaurs were known for their drunken brawls and uncontrollable rage. The most infamous event? The Battle of the Lapiths and Centaurs, where they fought against the Lapiths during a wedding feast, leading to a massacre of both men and women. Their brutal behavior was more than just a mythological tale. It symbolized the chaos that could occur when civilization collided with the wild, untamed forces of nature. But why did the Greeks depict centaurs this way? Was it a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and savagery, or a deeper reflection on humanity's struggle between reason and instinct? The darker truth behind the centaur myth might just hold the key to understanding the wild, primal side of ancient Greek culture. Centaurs are more than just mythical beasts. They represent the conflict within us all. If you're fascinated by the hidden truths of ancient myths, don't forget to subscribe for more dark stories from Greek mythology. You thought fairy tales were magical. Think again. The real origins of these classic tales are disturbing, gruesome, and filled with horror. Many of these stories have been sanitized for modern audiences, but their original versions were filled with betrayal, curses, and brutal consequences. From Pinocchio's horrifying fate to the true story of Bluebeard, let's dive into the darker side of fairy tales that history tried to erase. Fairy tales weren't always about happily ever after. Many of them were cautionary tales, warning of real dangers, human cruelty, and supernatural horrors. 1. The original Pinocchio, a gruesome fate. Before Disney made him a lovable puppet, Carlo Collodi's original Pinocchio was a terrifying little troublemaker. Instead of learning his lesson, he was hanged from a tree by a group of bandits, left to suffocate as a punishment for his misdeeds. 2. Bluebeard, the serial killer's tale. Bluebeard was not a misunderstood nobleman. He was a full-blown serial killer. In Charles Perrault's version, Bluebeard marries multiple women and forbids them from entering one locked room. When his latest wife disobeys, she discovers the corpses of his past wives, hanging from hooks. He nearly kills her too, but she's saved at the last second by her brothers. Some believe this gruesome tale was inspired by real-life figures like Gilles de Rais, a nobleman convicted of horrific crimes. 3. The Pied Piper, a tale of mass disappearance. The Pied Piper of Hamelin was not just about a man who played music to lead away rats. He also took the children. In some versions, the town refuses to pay him for his services, so he takes revenge by luring all of their children into a cave, where they are never seen again. Historians believe this could be based on a real event, where an entire group of children from Hamelin mysteriously vanished in the Middle Ages. 4. Rumpelstiltskin, a vengeful trickster. In the original versions of Rumpelstiltskin, when the young queen guesses his name, he doesn't just leave. He flies into a rage so intense that he tears himself in half. In some versions, he stomps on the ground in fury, falling into a pit and disappearing forever. His obsession with taking the queen's child has led some to believe he wasn't just a trickster, but something far darker. 5. The Robber Bridegroom, a wedding night nightmare. This lesser-known grim tale tells the story of a young woman forced to marry a wealthy man. Suspicious of her husband-to-be, she follows him to his home, only to discover that he and his band of robbers murder and eat women. She watches in horror as they butcher a young girl, cutting her into pieces. Luckily, she escapes and exposes them, leading to their execution. 6. The Juniper Tree, a tale of cannibalism and revenge. One of the most horrifying grim fairy tales, The Juniper Tree tells of a stepmother who decapitates her stepson, cooks his body, and feeds it to his unsuspecting father. The boy's sister buries his bones under a juniper tree, and from the tree the boy returns as a vengeful spirit, transforming into a bird and dropping a millstone on his stepmother, crushing her to death. 7. The Girl Without Hands, a story of betrayal and survival. In this disturbing fairy tale, a poor man accidentally sells his daughter to the devil in exchange for wealth. When she resists the devil's temptations, her own father chops off her hands to fulfill the bargain. Eventually, she escapes, gains magical silver hands, and finds a happier fate, but not before enduring unimaginable suffering. Why were these stories so disturbing? Fairy tales weren't just for children. They were warnings, morality lessons, and sometimes outright horror stories meant to instill fear and obedience. Over time, many of them were altered, softened, or rewritten to make them more acceptable. Which of these dark fairy tales shocked you the most? Want to uncover more forgotten stories and chilling legends? Subscribe now and dive into the forgotten history of fairy tales. You've heard of a goddess whose beauty was unmatched. But what if I told you that her beauty wasn't what it seemed? In fact, her allure led to some of the darkest consequences in ancient myth. This goddess, adored by many, held the power to captivate anyone with a mere glance. She was so beautiful that her charm could sway the gods, kings, and mortals alike. But this beauty came with a deadly price. The goddess we're talking about is none other than Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love and beauty. While she is often depicted as the epitome of grace, sensuality, and allure, her beauty was more of a curse than a gift. Aphrodite's powers extended beyond just physical beauty. Her charm was irresistible, but it came at a cost. Her very presence could bring turmoil. Many heroes and kings fell victim to their obsession with her. Take Paris, for instance. His decision to choose Aphrodite as the fairest of the goddesses set in motion the events that led to the Trojan War. His desire for her beauty caused the death of thousands and the fall of Troy. But Aphrodite's beauty didn't just destroy men, it could break gods too. The tale of her and Ares, the god of war, exemplifies this. While Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths, her passionate affair with Ares led to chaos among the gods. Her beauty wasn't just about attraction, it caused jealousy, betrayal, and ultimately destruction. Despite her dazzling appearance, Aphrodite was also a figure of deceit and destruction, proving that beauty, when it holds such power, can be dangerous. It's no wonder the ancient Greeks warned that appearances can be deceiving. Aphrodite's beauty may have dazzled the world, but her story teaches us that sometimes what's on the surface can mask a much darker reality. So, was Aphrodite's beauty a blessing or a curse? The myths suggest that beauty, when wielded by the gods, is never what it seems. If you want to uncover more hidden truths about gods and goddesses from the ancient world, hit that subscribe button. There's so much more to explore in these captivating stories of the past. Ask most people about Greek myth and you get 12 labors, a Gorgon's haircut, or a fire thief nailed to a cliff. Tonight we leave the doom scroll and open the side door, some lesser-known legends where the gods give instead of take. Or something you love, silence the group chat, because each tale rolls out in 4 acts, exactly like a Netflix mini-EP. First jar on the left, a polished grain of barley the size of a thumbnail. Let's pry it open. Eleusis, dusk. Fields are dust. Demeter still mourns Persephone. Villagers starve, except Triptolemus, teen son of King Celeus, who offers the goddess barley porridge cooked from his final handful of grain. Moved, Demeter turns her grief to gratitude and hands him a leather pouch of enchanted seed. Demeter's next gift is wilder, a bronze chariot yoked to two serpents the size of river dolphins. They hiss, but obey her touch. Fly, she tells Triptolemus, and sow the earth. He launches like steam from a kettle, dragons beating emerald wings over seas and mountains, seed flitting from his fist, taking root the instant it kisses dirt. Triptolemus lands in Scythia, demonstrates plowing, and shares bread hotter than sunrise. Their ruler Lyncus smiles, then creeps into the guest hut with a dagger, planning to steal credit. Demeter's serpents coil awake, eyes phosphorescent. Steel meets scale. The goddess materializes and, with a snap, turns Lyncus into the first lynx, forever stalking fields he can never harvest. Triptolemus lifts off again, safer and wiser, dragons spiraling like living irrigation lines. Everywhere wheat sprouts, famine folds, and villages invent words for thank you. When he finally parks the chariot in Eleusis, Demeter names him patron of farmers and slots a constellation, the sower, above the autumn sky. Rural Greeks still claim that seeing twin shooting stars at harvest means Triptolemus's dragons are checking yields. In Achaean rites, stonemason Mycilus woke 3 nights running to the same dream. Hercules, lion skin reeking of cedar smoke, beckoned him across the sea to the pebble-dappled waters of Asar. Leaving one's birthplace was illegal, but divine persistence outweighs city ordinances. Neighbors dragged him before the civic tribunal. Verdicts were cast with white, acquit, and black, condemn, pebbles dropped into an urn. Mycilus prayed under his breath. As judges emptied the urn, every stone, white and black alike, shone snow white. Gasps. No law forbade miracle loopholes, so the council shrugged and released their suddenly blameless defendant. Mycilus sailed west. At Italy's heel, he found the river Asar flashing with pale cobbles, exact match to his dream. He also found an old burial mound dedicated to a local hero named Croton, once hospitable to Hercules himself. Prophecy clicked like a lock. He founded Croton on that spot, planting the first stone in the new city wall with his own calloused hands. 2 generations later, Croton would dominate Magna Graecia in athletics and medicine, home of Milo the wrestler and Pythagoras' school. Locals still tell tourists to pocket a white pebble for courage, Hercules' ancient thumbs up. On Crete, baby Zeus hides from Cronus inside the Idaean cave. A gentle goat, Amalthea, nurses him with milk so sweet it smells of thyme. Curate's warriors clash shields outside to drown infant cries. Toddler Zeus, already wrestling destiny, grabs Amalthea's horn during roughhousing. It snaps off. Horrified, he touches the broken horn and wills it to pour ambrosia and jewels, an apology in infinite supply. The horn becomes cornucopia, everlasting symbol of abundance. Amalthea is lifted to the stars as Capella, brightest goat in the sky. Every harvest festival, Greeks tip wine from a horn-shaped rhyton, so the cave child remembers. The practice survives today in the very shape of Thanksgiving centerpieces, because one young god learned that breaking something you love can birth generosity that never runs dry. Argos prepares a grand procession to Hera's temple 6 miles away. Oxen assigned to pull the gilded cart of Priestess Sidip, aka Mor or Awol. Her sons, athletes Cleobus and Biton, lock eyes and shrug. Where are the oxen today? They yoke themselves, veins corded, and drag the 2-ton cart under Mediterranean noon. Crowds scatter petals, sweat rains on marble road. At the temple steps, mother dismounts, trembling with pride. Sidippe prays, "Great Hera, grant my sons the best blessing a mortal can have." After sacrifice and feast, the exhausted brothers fall asleep in the sacred hall, smiles still ghosting their faces. They never wake. Peaceful exit at peak glory, Hera's idea of the highest gift. Argives commission life-size statues at Delphi, muscles forever flexed. Travelers note the serenity on stone brows, testament that sometimes a swift, dignified curtain call outranks long, ragged applause. Young Taurus, demigod son of Poseidon, pilots a skiff scouting for new colonies. The storm detaches rudder from reality. Mast snaps like uncooked spaghetti. Waves swallow everything but Taurus clinging to driftwood. Poseidon, scanning seafloor currents, flicks his trident. A dolphin larger than a rowboat rockets upward, scoops Taurus, and planes across the wine-dark sea like a living surfboard. At dawn, the dolphin deposits him on Italy's sunlit heel. Taurus climbs a bluff, sees fertile plains ribboned by a gentle river. He plants Poseidon's miniature bronze trident in the sand and declares a new polis. The colony, Tarentum, today's Taranto, mints coins of a boy riding a dolphin, trident aloft. Local fishermen still carve tiny dolphins on prows, tribute to the uncanny GPS system that once delivered a founder to the perfect harbor. Aphrodite and winged son Eros picnicked amid spring anemones, boasting who could gather the loveliest bouquet. With wings, Eros predictably stuffed his basket first. Enter Peristera, a mortal handmaid collecting herbs nearby. Seeing Aphrodite's crestfallen smile, she wordlessly tipped her own armful of blooms into the goddess's basket. Eros protested, "Rules breach." Aphrodite just laughed, victory fragrant in her arms. Jealousy and Cupid's arrows share barbs. Eros flicked one tiny dart and poof, Peristera shrank into downy white feathers. Aphrodite scooped up the bewildered bird, whispering apologies and protection. Peristera, now a dove, gained a new language of coos and cloud-high freedom. The goddess decreed doves sacred henceforth, harbingers of peace and liaisons for lovers. From Cyprus to Corinth, newlyweds release white doves, so their first horizon carries Peristera's gift. Help your friends win, and you may end up airborne, emblematic, and forever cherished by a goddess who remembers favors. Cretan teenager Epimenides entered a cave seeking a stray lamb. Cool air lulled him into a nap on soft moss. When he stepped back into sunlight, the lamb was a weather-bleached skull, and his town looked upgraded. He'd slept 57 years. Word of the time traveler raced to Athens, then reeling under plague and factional strife. They summoned Epimenides. He prescribed symbolic spring water baths for citizens and a cleansing of unjust murder cases, the world's first state-sanctioned amnesty. He also ringed the city with incense-burning altars to the unknown god, appeasing whichever deity felt snubbed. Within a year, the plague receded, civic tempers cooled. Grateful Athenians offered gold. Epimenides accepted only vines for his Cretan temple, proof that sleep had taught him value over price. Legends credit him with tweaking the Greek lunar calendar and penning riddling prophecies. Even today, Cretan shepherds warn drowsy companions, "Nap too long in a sacred cave, you'll wake up a consultant." Aristaeus, son of Apollo and huntress Cyrene, loved tinkering. Olives here, cheese there. When shepherds complained of wild honey going rancid, Aristaeus studied bees like living alchemy. Nymph tutors taught smoke calming and linen veils. Soon, Aristaeus produced honey rumored to heal fevers. Even Olympians craved his combs. One blistering summer, disease wiped out his hives. Desperate, he consulted shape-shifting Proteus, who advised a strange remedy. Sacrifice 4 bulls and leave their carcasses sealed. From decay rose new swarms, robust and disease-proof, the mythical origin of begonia, or bee birth. Greek farmers copied the ritual symbolically with perfumed ox hides draped over empty hives at spring equinox. Aristaeus planted thyme to flavor future honey, invented the first clay smoker, and dedicated his success to the seasonal Etesian winds, ensuring cool breezes helped the bees cap wax perfectly. Modern beekeepers in Greece still call a sudden helpful wind Aristaeus's breath. Zeus and Hermes, disguised as dusty travelers, canvassed a Phrygian village for lodging. Gold door mansions slammed shut. Only an aged, poor couple, Baucis and Philemon, welcomed them into a mud brick hut. They served cabbage soup, pork scraps, and local wine. Mid-pour, Baucis noticed the jug stayed full. Eyes widened. Guests revealed divine light. The couple's first instinct? Ask the gods to spare their nasty neighbors if possible. Mercy before schadenfreude, classy. The village morphed into a marsh. The hut blossomed into marble columns. Zeus offered any reward. They chose to be temple keepers and to die together. Years later, as breath slowed, bark crept over their skin. Philemon an oak, Baucis a linden, branches intertwined over the temple forecourt. Travelers claim the twin trunks still rustle blessings on strangers who share food with drifters. Local children leave tiny cups of soup under the roots, because kindness apparently scales from hut to eternity tree. From marble votes that rewrite destiny to bees reborn in golden sunlight, tonight's legends hum one chord. Generosity, of spirit, of risk, of welcome, catches the gods' attention faster than any heroic flex. Drop a comment naming the myth that lit you up and tell us how you'd translate its core gift into today's